Harvard has a terrible history toward Jews. It's time for a reckoning. Harvard's history of anti-Semitism. I will no longer contribute money to Harvard or to Yale or to the City University of New York unless and until there is a reckoning with the history.
Okay. That's Alan Dershowitz. He's cracking down. He's had enough of all this stuff going on college campus, all these pro-Hamas protests. And that's fine, right? I applaud. Whoa, that's awesome. Do the right thing. Where was any of this when the Black Lives Matter and Antifa street animals were taking over college campuses and burning down American cities and murdering people in the country? Not only were none of these people outraged, they all supported them. Interesting. Joining me now, my friend Inez Stepman, Senior Policy Analyst for the Independent Women's Forum. Inez, look, again, that's wonderful. We're doing the right thing now. None of these people care about America, though?
Yeah, I can really understand why people resent this on the right. They resent that finally this is the place where the line has been drawn. That being said, of course, I wholeheartedly support drawing the line here. If not, I supported drawing the line quite a while ago. But that being said, I understand the resentment, but I think we have to look forward. This is an enormous opportunity. In some ways, I think a lot of people's eyes are opened. Again, you and I know foolishly for the first time. If you couldn't predict what has been happening on American college campuses with regard to Hamas, then you haven't been paying attention to the ideology that has taken over not only those campuses, but from those campuses, every other institution in American life. This is not surprising. If this shocks you, you need to take a very long, hard look at your worldview. And sometimes this seems like a sort of superficial alliance between the wokes and the they-thems and the binaries, right? And Hamas, but in fact, it's an alliance that makes a lot of sense because they have the same enemies, right? It's the cradle of civilization, between Athens and Jerusalem. It's Western civilization, the United States, Jews, Christians, white people, Americans, Israelis. For them, each one of these groups slots into that oppressor slot in this very rigid hierarchical worldview of oppressor and oppressed. And so, to me, this makes sense. They have the same enemies, and the enemy is us.
Of course. And one of my favorite things about you is you don't have any time for pie-in-the-sky notions. It's one of the things that drives me crazy, these people with pie-in-the-sky notions. And I see this still all the time on the right. I see these pie-in-the-sky notions about what young people are capable of. They'll dismiss them as being, a little left, okay, naive, certainly wrong. That's not how Mao saw young people. That's not how Pol Pot saw young people. Vicious dictators have understood that young people are the perfect standing army, and we have one already in this country. People don't want to acknowledge it, but we do. They're standing, and it would only take a nudge in a direction to aim them, and they would do terrible things.
Yeah, there's this idea, again, that this is not a direct result of allowing this hard left ideology to control the American education system and at the K-12 level for the last 30 years, at the higher ed level, God knows how long. William F. Buckley wrote God, a Man, and Gale 70 years ago, and we've done exactly nothing about it since then. So yeah, in some ways, we are reaping the results of allowing the left to take over. What did you think was going to happen? That you could teach an entire 2 generations of Americans that America's evil, that white people are oppressors, that anything having to do with Western history or anything suggesting that it's good to be proud of being an American, to be proud of being part of Western civilization, which is superior to other civilizations. All of these notions have not just been out of fashion in the academy, but been actively vilified in the academy on the university level, like I said, for over 70 years, and on the K-12 level for the last 30 years. Did you think that there would be no consequences when you see these poll numbers showing that Americans 18 to 24, the majority of them, not just support Palestine, right? But actually say that this kind of slaughter of women and children, right, is justified based on the grievances that Palestinians have against the state of Israel. Don't fool yourself. That poll could be replicated in terms of the distribution of views over age, that poll could be just replicated about any American action. These same people don't think the United States was justified in dropping a bomb on Hiroshima. Okay, they fundamentally they hate their own civilization, they hate the West, and Israel is just an extension, just another thing to slot into that oppressor slot. They hate you just as much, and the same reaction would happen. And I fear the same reaction would happen if there was an attack on the United States today.
Oh, of course it would. By the way, you have a piece up in USA Today, good piece about taxing universities. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think after the last couple of weeks, it's clearer than ever, though, although, of course, I think it's been clear for quite some time. We need to treat universities as what they are. They're hostile entities within the United States. And unfortunately, they exist in an enormously privileged position where the U.S. taxpayer is essentially funding this enormous wealth and power and control and locus of politics is happening in the universities. And here there's the sort of final insult, injury to add to insult right here is that we will bail out student loans. Even if nothing happens, this Biden plan was struck down, we own these loans, right? So when people default on the loans, it's the U.S. taxpayer that's already the creditor. If people declare bankruptcy, if they default, right? We're already the creditor on the other side of the table with these loans. 93% of them are held and originated by the Department of Education. You can thank Obama for that. So we own these loans. And my suggestion is that the U.S. taxpayer should in no way pay them back, that in fact we should hold universities responsible for the ever escalating cost and ever decreasing value of the product that they're offering. They have not shown themselves as worthy of public investment, and we should simply tax the enormous wealth that they have. And use it to make sure that taxpayers never have to pay for these student loans, which is right now what is going to happen. What regardless of what sort of we want to happen, that's what's going to happen. The taxpayers is going to pay for these student loans.
Should the red states be getting much more aggressive with the universities within their borders? I look at my own state in Texas. Everyone thinks about red Texas and red this and red that. Our universities, many of them are just putrid here. We have medical schools that still have vax requirements right here in the red state of Texas.
Yeah, I mean, I think Florida has really led the way on this, and as on so many things, they're really doing a serious review of essentially the universities that are connected to the state, the state universities, and they're asserting the small d democratic control that is absolutely legitimate to assert over these universities. On the right, we have allowed ourselves to lapse into this idea that the assertion of political power is always bad, right? We have to be neutral, that we can't actually use public instruments towards our own ends, even when those ends are legitimate and backed through the democratic process. We find that there's something icky or illegitimate about doing that. In fact, the opposite is true. Not using those legitimate powers of the state has allowed the left to completely take over these institutions against the will of most of the citizens who, let me remind you, again, we are paying for this. Right? The idea that we have no say over what goes on in institutions funded by us is ridiculous. It's an anti-democratic idea. And we should reassert that. Florida has done a good job doing that. There have been other states looking at it. I would also, frankly, and in the proposal that IWF put out, we suggest that states should take a look at the property owned by universities, right? Oftentimes, universities are the largest property owners in the state. They're mostly currently exempted from high property taxes, right? These are universities that, again, have not justified this very special carve out that they have, where we all pretend that they're these like nonprofit, just it's always good, right? These entities are always good. They're doing good things. And so we don't want to treat them just like anything else. Well, what they actually are Hamas supporting public hedge funds. And we should start treating them as though that is what they are. And we should tax them like that is what they are. And this is just a matter of looking at the situation on the ground and realizing that whatever you think about your alma mater or your university 20, 30, 40, 60, 70, 100 years ago, that's not what that institution stands for today. It's not its output. And it's just looking at a hard look at what the universities are actually doing to this country. And most of it is not good. And so we ought not to extend them this special little carve out where we fund the student loans, we give billions in grants, and at the back end, we forgive the student loans, where these universities are getting ever richer. They have, close to $1 trillion in endowment funds, right? How does that make any sense? Any sense in terms of justice, in terms of policy, or in terms of politics, frankly? It makes no sense, and we ought to start righting that ship, I guess.
Still, nobody has endorsed the Jesse Kelly plan of just firing every employee and bulldozing the buildings to the ground, but we'll all get there one day. Inez, thank you so much. I appreciate it.